Hey there everyone, Video Game Cabinet here, and tonight we are back with a review of Kuon for the PS2. Kuon is known amongst collectors as the rarest and most expensive game for the PlayStation 2. From Software developed this Japanese survival horror title in 2004, releasing to extremely limited sales and mixed critical reception. A complete copy now fetches for quite the sum of money, and I was fortunate enough to attain my authentic CIB by trade earlier this year. I decided to play the game this past week, taking roughly 10 hours to complete all 3 phases of the campaign. Kuon provides tense atmosphere and intriguing lore for fans of old-school survival horror, even if it does not represent the genre's very best or most polished. Kuon begins with a gruesome opening cinematic, depicting a ghastly woman murdering a man and proceeding to stuff his body into a box and herself along with it. The story takes place during the Heian period in Japan, where a curse of some sort has taken over a feudal lord's manor. You see the subsequent events from 3 different perspectives. One is the Yin phase, where you play as Utsuki, a young girl who is searching for her father Domon and sister Kuria. The second part of the campaign is the Yang phase, where you play as Sakuya, a disciple of Domon and member of a strike team sent to the manor in order to investigate the disturbances. After you complete both phases, you unlock a third phase where you play as Seimei, a rival priest to Domon who is infiltrating the manor just after the conclusion of the Yin and Yang phases. The first 2 phases follow a similar flow with many of the same puzzles and hidden items, but still have enough small differences with each character's perspective to enhance the story further. And then the third phase is rather short, skimming through the same areas seen in the previous phases. I beat all 3 phases on Insomnia setting, normal difficulty. The Yin phase felt far too easy, but the difficulty picks up a bit in the Yang phase, with enemies posing more of a threat, offering some decent challenge. I mostly relied on the dagger, fan, and spear when fighting the gakis and monsters, and usually reserved the spell cards for boss battles. Saving your progress is also limited by finding vessel figurines, requiring proper item management. Kuon plays a lot like a standard issue survival horror title from the late 1990s and early 2000s, which I personally do enjoy. It may not be for everyone, but I am a fan of this type of game with the tank controls, purposely weak combat, and emphasis on puzzles. The themes explored in Kuon's story are interesting and unique. Taking place in Japan over 1,000 years ago, the time period and setting depicted here are distinct and different from most other horror games I have played. The concept of the possessed individuals merging with others to form a cocoon and be reborn was also quite chilling. The storytelling is not perfect by any means, though. While some revelations are divulged in gripping fashion, there is also a fair number of moments and cutscenes that are vague and confusing, either due to the murkiness of the plot or poor translation by the localization team. I was admittedly underwhelmed when I first watched the ending. It somehow did not deliver the dramatic punch I was hoping for, although certain subtleties become a little more clear upon further reflection. Kuon is a good playthrough for fans of Japanese mythology and horror, provided you have the funds to buy a copy. The gameplay is what you would expect from an obscure survival horror title from the early 2000s, but I like it. Some of the story beats hit harder than others, and the ending was a bit anticlimactic. Overall, though, I got some genuine scares and had solid fun with Kuon. 7 out of 10. And that is my review. Yeah, this review was a bit hard to write. I have to admit, I felt compelled to give it like at least an 8 or a 9, just for how much money it's worth, and how much money I had to put into getting this. Like I said, I got it by trade, but I bought 2 copies of a couple of expensive games a few years ago and traded them in to get this. So I still had to put a lot of money into it, and it's like, oh God, it's got to be worth it. At least an 8 or a 9, but no. But I do have a reputation to maintain. I do take my scores seriously, and 7 out of 10 is really what this game deserved. I did like it, but it has problems. And I will say these games that are like between like a 6.5, 7, 7.5, like these reviews are hard to write because I do like a game, that gets a 6.5, 7, 7.5, but there is stuff wrong with it. So, some scenes in this game were cool, others were confusing. If you notice in the cutscenes, the lips don't move, but I mean, it's kind of funny. But it's still a lot of the cutscenes are still effective though in their mood and atmosphere. I did start to like it a little bit better the more that I thought about it. As I was playing it, I was thinking, kind of hoping, oh, this seems like an 8 out of 10, like the atmosphere is really good. But then the ending was really anticlimactic and quick, and I didn't understand it. At first I was like, oh, maybe this is like a 6.5, but then I watched a YouTube video explaining exactly what was happening, and I rewatched the ending, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, certain little things make sense. It is a little too quick and anticlimactic, though, but I think a 7 is really fair for this. It is a good game, but it's got problems. Compared to some other expensive survival horror games, of around that time period, it's definitely, it's not as good as Haunting Ground or Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly. Those two I gave 8s. And it's definitely nowhere near as good as Rule of Rose, which is the other really expensive PS2 game. That one I reviewed a year and a half ago. Rule of Rose, legitimately, I really, really love that game. I don't want to get off topic, but the story about the schoolgirls in the 1930s, that was very relatable, and the school bullying, that was really, really good. This one's a lot of Japanese horror and mythology, maybe depending on your taste, but like the cutscenes and the production going into the cutscenes and the music and everything in Rule of Rose, to me, was a lot more effective. Rule of Rose, I gave a 9.5. This one is definitely nowhere near as good as that, or even Haunting Ground or Fatal Frame 2. But it is better than, say, Cold Fear. That one I reviewed sometime in the last year. Cold Fear, I think I gave a 5.5. That one was just meh, okay. This game is better than that. It's got more interesting themes and ideas with the story, even though, like, there's a lot of stuff about the plot, a lot of themes that are really cool, and when you think about them more, they're really cool, but, like, there's a lot of murkiness, and you don't know, there's a lot of confusion, and you don't know if it's because the plot is murky or was there mistranslations. It's tough to say, or a little bit of both. There are typos throughout the game in some of the journals that you pick up, and some of the dialogue during certain cutscenes, you're not sure if it was mistranslated or not. It's kind of confusing, but anyway, so now right at the end of this video, I want to go into some spoiler talk. So if you're planning on playing the game, definitely shut the video off here. This is your warning. But if you have played it, this is just going to be some, open discussion dialogue to myself. And if you have any comments, please put them in the comment section, to maybe clear up some of my confusion here. Because like I said, some of the story here, it was confusing. Starting with the ending. The ending, for me, flew by so fast. It was hard to catch exactly what was going on. But from what I understand, Utsuki is putting herself and Domon, her dad's body, into the chest. And Seimei, who's the rival priest, she's coming to mess up the box or whatever, but Sakuya says, no, wait, let's see what happens. And then Seimei gives Sakuya really quickly, she's like, okay, fine. And she gives her extra daggers and says, this is just to satisfy my curiosity. I guess she's not talking about the daggers, because Sakuya says, what are these? She says, to satisfy my curiosity. No, she's talking about the fact that she's letting Utsuki do her thing in the box. And then the credits roll really fast. Boom, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. And it's not exactly spelled out. I didn't understand it at first, and then I saw a YouTube synopsis explaining that the little kid coming out of the manor grounds is Utsuki and Domon reborn from the box cocoon that they made. It's confusing, and it's really, really quick, and didn't have the dramatic punch that I was hoping for, but I understand it a little bit better now after thinking about it. There's another scene earlier in the Yin phase, the first phase with Utsuki, where you play as her, that doesn't make sense, where you run into Domon. It's a little bit towards the end of that phase, and Domon is talking to Utsuki, and he says that you have been led to believe that Utsuki killed you. It sounds like, does he think he's talking to the sister Kuria? And he says, like, Utsuki didn't kill you, your sister lied to you, it was the twins that did it. But he's talking to Utsuki. Is it a mistranslation? Utsuki is the only one standing there. Did the two sisters merge? I don't really get it. It's very confusing. It's murky. I also heard in another YouTube video that at some point both sisters actually died. But, I could watch YouTube videos all day, but the events here in the game itself are hard to infer, are hard to decipher. The plot is a bit murky. I do like the themes, there are still some cool scenes, though, like when Utsuki is having a flashback to how her sister fell down from the cliff, and she sees the twins coming, and that part is like a little bit like mysterious and confusing in a cool way. But even if everything does not make perfect sense, the story does have some cool and creepy ideas in there. And it is effective to play through this and get scared by some of the jump scares and atmosphere. The atmosphere is really chilling and thick in this one. Oh yeah, and speaking of mistranslation, yeah, like I think I've mentioned earlier in the review, yeah, there's journals that you find, and I spotted a couple typos in there, small ones, but you got to think that, yeah, the translation team here, the localization team, they must have mistranslated a couple things here and there, but oh well. But anyways, yeah, so those are my thoughts. That's the end of the spoiler section. I did like this game. I thought it was cool. I did not like it as much as some of the other survival horror games that I've played recently, specifically Haunting Ground and Fatal Frame 2, and definitely nowhere near as good as Rule of Rose. And it's definitely not as good as some of the mainstream Resident Evils and Silent Hills that I've played recently. But it's still a good game, but it's got some issues. But anyway, those are my thoughts. 7 out of 10 for Kuon. I am proud to have this in the collection. It's a great collector's piece, but don't go in expecting the greatest game ever. But I'm glad I played it. I'm gonna keep it. I like having this. It's a really, really good trophy collector's item there. So that's it. 7 out of 10 for Kuon there, complete with the manual and everything. Very nice. 7 out of 10 for the game itself. And have a good night.